President Trump is in Poland now ahead of the G20 summit in Germany. He made brief remarks on the missile launch before his departure. All right, the threat must be dealt with after a quarter century of inaction, says Charles Krauthammer.
What the North Koreans have done is to cross the Rubicon. I mean, this is an entirely new phase. What's happened today is that for 25 years, successive administrations have kicked the can down the road. We're at the end of the road.
All right, Greg, even though Charles Krauthammer used a banned phrase of kicking the can down the road, the theory is correct.
And crossing the Rubicon. Kicking the can into the road. North Korea is a threat. We know this. How big of a threat right now? Who knows? What's important is you have to have a series of measures that allow you to escalate pressure without leading to nuclear war. Yeah, it's about having all these options at the ready. If you want to win at strip poker, you wear a lot of clothes. so you can take off one thing at a time.
You would know.
So you have to have a lot of options. Dealing with national security is like wearing a lot of clothes during strip poker. You start taking things off.
Finger gloves.
Yeah, finger gloves, exactly. So it's important that you have these options. And I think you noticed it with Syria, the way they treated that. They started with an option that sent a message. But it wasn't a message that led to retaliation. It was, we're going to take out a few of your planes at the airport. And then there was the MOAB, the mother of all bombs. So you have these things that are, they're measures that help you move closer and closer, making them nervous. But, you know, the problem is you also have to look at North Korea's perspective here. What if they play ball? What if they de-escalate? What if they decide not to have nuclear weapons? What happened to Gaddafi?
Right. Well, I think that is probably part
of
his,
the streets.
Yes. It is partly his calculation. Jesse, earlier today, President Trump tweeted, trade between China and North Korea grew almost 40% in the first quarter. So much for China working with us, but we had to give it a try. That number surprised me, that 40% number, because it's been no secret that North Korea has been a big problem, and China saying that it wants to help, but you know, if it provides 90% of its goods and 40% increase, that's a big difference.
That's why trying to leverage China is only one option. That's only one article of clothing, Greg.
Exactly.
40%, that's a lot of trade. And if we want to go into a trade war with China, that's what we're going to have to do. But I think there's other things you can do. You have the UN Security Council sanctions package. You could do that. But again, another banned phrase, kicking the can down the road. Preemptive strikes, I believe, are too risky. It's too dangerous, and too many people will die. I think the only legitimate option is an assassination attempt or a coup, but that possibility is probably the most difficult. So I think what President Trump needs to do is make sure the North Koreans, but as well South Korea, Japan, China, and Russia, believe that we are going to take preemptive action unless, and here's the unless. I think the unless has to be the intelligence agencies of Russia, South Korea, Japan, and China, and the United States. They need to start collaborating and get some spies in there and get an assassination network or cell in there and to take preemptive action that way. Because I think a decapitation strategy is the best strategy. And ultimately, this is a huge test for Donald Trump, because if he doesn't rally the Pacific partners like he did rally the Sunni nations in the Middle East, we could have in a year or so, I don't know how long it's going to take, but a missile that could potentially reach San Francisco, could reach Los Angeles. And this is why it's not a partisan issue. This is not Iraq. This is not just a regional threat. This is a threat to the homeland. So I think, you know, Republicans and Democrats need to rally around the leadership of the president and try to get the UN involved, but make sure this menace does not reach our shores.
And there's, Kimberly, a new president in South Korea as well. And this is a person that thinks a little bit differently than previous presidents of South Korea. In fact, one of the suggestions on the table as a possible option is that the United States would stop doing joint military exercises with South Korea in order to placate Kim Jong-il. I don't like that idea, but I guess it's one of the many bad options on the table.
Yeah, that's a really bad option. I agree with you. So placating isn't going to get us anywhere. This whole strategic patience thing, it's done. Don't even ever mention it again to anybody. So what we need to do here is we need to start punishing people. They need to understand they only respect the fist. And I would start first, yes, with economic sanctions, and anybody, Chinese governments, banks, et cetera, anybody doing business with North Korea, they need to be publicly identified and shut down. There's no more of this in terms of just allowing people to go ahead and do what they want privately, and then everything, the onus is on the United States. Also, I think most importantly, let's be honest, and Charles Krauthammer is right, we've got no more space or no more room on the runway here. Okay? They need to pursue actively and immediately regime change. The problem with North Korea is this family, starting with Kim Jong-il, the grandfather, and also Kim Jong-un, they are seen almost as a religious family, almost like a deity. And so you have to then replace them with someone that the North Koreans will accept of similar like. So instead of just saying, okay, we're going to take them out, then do this and that, you have to make sure that it's something that's going to stabilize the region, that the people will be accepting of, while at the same time pursuing the parallel path of the economic sanctions and putting pressure. We need to put pressure on Europe as well. They can't be doing any business with them, because if you sit there at the table with Kim Jong-un and you placate, then you are looking at two very disastrous results. You are looking at a nuclear Iran, thanks to the past administration, and you are looking at a nuclear North Korea. Those are both untenable options. So you can't do that. Put pressure on Europe, because they don't want a nuclear Iran that could reach them as well. They're also sitting ducks. So we have to work together cooperatively to put a stop to this. And I think there really is the will to do this in this current administration. There certainly is with our Secretary of State, Rex Tillerson, who also is really not going to suffer any fools in saying enough is enough.
Well, and this is a subject that you've covered for years as a journalist when you were at the Washington Post, NPR, and then at Fox News. And it seems like now the need is urgent to do something. And I wonder if you think there will be bipartisan support for President Trump when he decides to take action, whatever it might be.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's any question. I was surprised to hear Jesse said he's a great defender of San Francisco all of a sudden. But, progress in any quarter, I'll take.
Defender of lives in San Francisco.
I get confused sometimes. Anyway.
Just not the city council.
You know what's interesting to me is you talk to people, who have been in the national defense industry for some time, and they say it's time to start talks. And so it's not about the fist, because if you raise a fist to North Korea, not only do you endanger the 38,000 Americans who are right there on the border, our troops, but there's 10 million people in our prime ally, South Korea, in that city who could easily be struck because the North Koreans have so many missiles. It's not just one or two. So the options, Dana, are things like containment, which is to say you could put more of a naval force in the region, just to say to them clearly, no more trafficking in nuclear fissile material or any supplies coming in. They used, apparently, they couldn't use solid fuel. They had to use liquid fuel this time. So we could cut off some of that supply, hopefully, and get cooperation from the Chinese. What's curious to me is...
It takes longer to do that.
But I'm saying these are options. I don't think beating them up is going to solve it.
I didn't say that. That would be sophomoric to think so. I'm talking about eliminating their ability to retaliate. That's what you do.
That's what I think.
So if you eliminate their ability to hit South Korea, that's what we would have to have that in place.
Yeah, we would have to figure that out. But I think what's interesting to me is the president's going over to the G20. He's going to have the opportunity to talk to Putin, to talk to Xi Jinping, the Chinese president. Well, Russia and China have both said we should be negotiating with the North Koreans. So has the South Korean president, as you point out. It's just that we've tried before to negotiate, and this guy is a deceitful egomaniac and not trustworthy. But Russia and China seem to believe that's what we should do. I don't know. It seems to me like there's no choice here but for us as an American people to support President Trump. The thing is, he said is they're never going to do it. Never going to try an intercontinental ballistic missile that could reach the United. Well, they've done it, and he hasn't.
Right, and they did it a little bit sooner than anybody thought possible.
Can I just quickly address what Juan said? I know you're more of a carrot guy than a stick guy, but we've been using a lot of carrots with North Korea, and they've been using that. There it is. They've been using that money to then fund their nuclear weapons program. So I don't know how many more carrots we can give them. And then to talk about what KG said, you make a good point about exposing the companies and the countries that do business with the North Koreans. We should do more. We should shame them. We should make them.
President Gutfeld.
Yeah.
Freudian slip.
It's only a matter of time.
This is your monologue from last.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you look at the slave labor, that's an area to shame them when they're cutters building the stadiums. But also, like, if we have to be prepared to pay higher prices if we want to go after China. Would
Yeah.
you rather have a war or pay higher prices to go after China because they're doing the trade, they're dealing with the labor?
All right. Higher price for an iPhone, or you wipe out San Francisco?
Apple. What about Apple?
Yeah.
I mean, Apple has companies in China, correct?
Trump could lean on
They make-
Apple to
yeah,
get something
there's like
done
a whole
over there.
iPhone city where
You know what would be my #1 solution, and I think we have actually done this, is get involved with cyber warfare. I think we stopped some of their launches by getting into their programming.
We did
The
already.
thing is that they're doing it too.
So my feeling is, why not say to the Chinese, hey, look, guys, it's reached the point where it's intolerable. You help us with this, but help us wage a cyber war against the North Koreans.
We're doing it. We already stopped them once before. And this one we could have. We watched while it
Well,
transpired.
and the thing is also the North Koreans are not too shabby in the cyber warfare department themselves, since that WannaCry virus from last month was actually started in North Korea.
I think
Correct.
Donald Trump is also playing mind games with China by saying, it's a shame you can't handle this small country nearby.
Right.
Make him look
I mean,
weak.
yeah. It's like I expected more from you.
Yep.
It's a
Make
country
them
of
lose
22
face in the
million
world.
people. That's like a tiny percentage, and they're just kicking your butt.
We need some more meme videos.
Yes.
Communicate our message.